Welcome to another episode of the Resinator's Conquest podcast. I am your host, the Resinator, and today our episode's going to be all about the 100 Kingdoms. And I'm going to start off by what I'm calling the count. So it's going to be my count and my army and kind of where it's at as of this moment. Now, last week I had a little bit of a problem when I was recording this. My glasses were glaring into the lights that were shining here, and that's just the setup I have, and so I decided this week, no glasses. Unfortunately, I have to read. So I didn't think about this too much. Here is the list of what I have currently for my 100 Kingdoms army. Now this was the first army that I started purchasing. I started with that big box, as I said last week, or 2 weeks ago, last episode I should say. I started with the starter box of the 100 Kingdoms and the Spires. And so here's the count of what I have now. We're going to start off with the characters, and hopefully if I got some good pictures, we'll be able to have cut into showing my actual army as it is, and as I go through this. So we're starting with characters. I've got a Noble Lord mounted. I've got a Noble Lord infantry style. I've got an Imperial officer, a chapter mage, and a theist priest. Those are my basic characters that I have. As for regiments, now these are going to be the assembled regiments I have, and then we'll go with unassembled regiments. And then for this army, I actually have 3 printed figures as well, so we'll go over that in just a minute. I've got 9 household knights, 4 mounted squires, 36 men-at-arms, 2 seasoned veterans, 36 mercenary crossbowmen, 29 steel legion, 1 drill master, 24 militia bowmen, 1 servite, 12 longbowmen, 8 household guard, and 1 arms master. Now that's what I have assembled. So unassembled, I have 16 more household guards, 12 steel legions. Now those I've just kind of been slowly putting them together. The reason I haven't been too in a hurry to put, obviously the steel legion, I have enough steel legion, but the household guard together is just because I technically have 3D printed versions of these. So for the 3D printed versions, I've actually got 24 household guard and 14 Sicarii. Now, I really wanted the Sicarii because I really wanted to go with a theist priest, and I wanted to just kind of see how they'd work, especially with like their lethal demise, I believe it was, and it just seemed like they were really fun to try to play out, and so I 3D printed some in order to play. How did I choose a color scheme? Well, sometimes I have difficulty trying to figure out exactly how I want to paint my armies, so I just asked someone. I got the color scheme from someone else, so it ended up being purple and green. I started off with those colors and just kind of worked with them, tried to work them into every different regiment, except for the mercenary crossbowmen. And here's my thinking. So I was like, they're mercenaries. Why are they going to have the household colors, of the rest of the army? So I purposely did not put purple or green on my mercenary crossbowmen. Everyone else is going to have, purple or green somewhere on their armor, ribbons, their heraldry, somewhere on it. And that was how the color scheme I chose. As for the state of it, how much do I have painted? As you'll see the pictures, it's like 80% maybe. I have paint on a lot of things, on almost everything, at least a Zenithal Prime, let's just say that. I got a Zenithal Prime on everything at a very minimum. But most things have some paint on them, and most things just need a little bit of detail. Like my Steel Legion, a couple of them need some little detail work. The household knights need a couple of details put on them, but other than that, everything's just kind of either base painted or just Zenithal primed. The other thing I did, which was really cool with my 100 Kingdoms army, is I was like, everyone has these bases where their whole army is like on a field of grass, or they're like in the dirt, or they're outside in somewhere, and I'm like, well, don't fights sometimes happen in cities, like where there's cobble or there's other kind of materials other than just like flowers and rock and dirt and grass, And so I wanted to do something totally different with my army, and so I actually 3D printed all the bases on, as I was saying before my memory card ran out, I decided to 3D print all my bases to look like cobblestone. And I was like, I had to have the stands, for Last Argument of Kings to match those cobblestone bases. And so I went through a couple of different techniques of trying to do something to make them look like cobblestone, but it was a lot of work, to be very honest. And I was like, I could just design my own stand and 3D print them. And so that's exactly what I did. I took some measurements on what the stands were, Then I took Cast and Play. Yeah, it was Cast and Play. I took one of their kind of cobblestone bases and then, laid it out in different segments on a stand. And then, put the holes in it so that, the bases will fit on there. 4 bases per stand. And I just 3D printed my own cobblestone stands for my army. And so that's what they're on. Obviously, the Household Knights, I put them on something different. The reason that they are based the way they are is because I was trying to base them for Kublai Khan. Actually, that's what it was. Kublai Khan 2021. I wanted to have at least one of my regiments all painted and based. And while I still need to finish some details on them, they're fully painted. And they just needed bases really to kind of make them look, cool. So I put them on these like flowery, kind of grassy bases, and the stands I had made to match, kind of the exact same way. It was a little bit of a quick rush job, but they're finished and they look amazing still. So I was happy with the way they turned out. I still have some more assembly to do. Obviously, I want to put together the household guard in order to kind of finish out and flesh out the army. And that's kind of where I'm at with my. Now we're going to move on to some of my favorite characters and regiments of the 100 Kingdoms so far. First, I'm going to start off with the Chapter Mage. So at first, I really didn't use the Chapter Mage. It was kind of magic, and it's kind of like, the advanced rules, I want to say. And I just kind of slowly build my way into playing with the Chapter Mage. But the real reason I found that I wanted to play with the Chapter Mage is that I felt I was losing this battle of attrition with other armies that had healing. And so, our regiment would engage, and they would start, banging away at me, I'd bang away at them, and then they'd heal. And then they'd bang away at me, and I'd bang away at them, and then they'd heal. And I'm like, now I'm like at half the size of my regiment, and they still have almost a full regiment. And it's just like I couldn't compete, and it was like really frustrating for me because I felt like I didn't have any way to either sustain my regiments in those battles or obviously heal. So I started looking around, like, the 100 Kingdoms have to have a way of healing in some way or another. Chapter Mage. So that's when I decided I was going to start playing with the Chapter Mage, and it's worked out wonders for me so far. What I like to do with my Chapter Mage is actually field her with a huge regiment of men-at-arms, especially with a seasoned veteran. So the seasoned veteran's going to go ahead and give the men-at-arms the Bastion draw event, which I love. I know you have to draw them first, but when they have Bastion, shields, and a defensive 2, you're looking at a defensive 4 now boosted up, which is amazing, at least from the front arc, That's amazing. So I really love having that good defensive capability, but then on top of that, you have the Chapter Mage sitting right in the middle, healing, boom, heal, boom, heal, boom, heal. And if you actually move your regiment up close enough, you can heal other regiments around you. So what I really like to do is pull them up to behind my Household Knights and then heal the Household Knights and bring the Household Knights back. I mean, that's amazing to just bring out another horse. So the next character that I really like playing with is the Mounted Noble Lord. Obviously, it's because of his supremacy ability of Speed of Horse, which I just absolutely love. It gives them Glorious Charge and +2 support. So this is just an amazing ability. It's always considered active as long as the Noble Lord is on the battlefield. And the stupid mistake that I continue to make with him is I'll charge up the regiment that has the Noble Lord into battle right away, and then he ends up getting killed, and then I lose my Speed of Horse. So learn the lesson from me. Do not charge him up right away. Leave him back a little bit. At least maybe if you can heal him or do something else to make sure he stays alive. Because once he's gone, they just all lost Glorious Charge. So Mounted Noble Lord is another one I love. Moving on to the regiments. Obviously, if I like the Noble Lord, I'm going to like the Household Knights. Now, their brutal impact is just one of the funnest things to play with. I really love to be able to get them into a charge, get the brutal impact hits, get them to be able to attack right afterwards in a clash, and just do devastating amount of damage. Now, the key, I think, to doing this is to pick a unit that you think you can wipe in one fell swoop. So that you go and you wipe them out, and then you're free to charge another regiment. Either that, or try to leave one or two behind, and that way you could finish them off with a clash and then maybe charge someone else the next round. That way you can get your charges in. But the real key to having the glorious charge, obviously, is to be able to charge and hit those brutal impact hits. So once they're in melee, they don't have a really great clash value, and they have no cleave. So they're really not going to get through a lot of armor. And then, they don't have a lot of hits, the 4 attacks each, but that's not a ton. So this next regiment that I really like playing with is one that I feel like I don't always get onto the battlefield as often as I'd like to, because they're stuck in reinforcements. But when they do get on the field, my opponent immediately fears them, and I tend to wipe out and clean up the battlefield as they kind of progress forward. And that is my Steel Legion. They are absolutely amazing models. I love their huge claymores, whatever your great swords, whatever you want to say that they have. Now I have to say, the ones with the skies that have the side swords, they are very annoying because you're trying to sit them on those stands and you end up knocking them over all the time. So I actually have been, trying to give those away and get more of the ones with just the, they're holding the sword upright. It's just easier to deal with when you're trying to make regiments. Love this, the aesthetics of the whole fully armored look, not having shields. They're tough enough, they don't need shields. And one of the first things I started doing really quickly with the Steel Legion was bringing my Imperial Officer as my warlord in order to be able to roll one, or give one to my rolls to reinforcements. And that was be able to get my Steel Legion hopefully a little bit faster. But honestly, it didn't seem like that big of a deal to just let them come out naturally the way they do. I started just kind of like forget about the Imperial Officer and just, bringing them as kind of a way to mop up the battlefield, really. So especially with the reinforcement rolls where you can come in on the side of the battlefields, if you've progressed far enough and kept your enemy far enough back, those Steel Legion can come in on the side and be really devastating, either to take over an objective or to, do some harm to other regiments, enemy regiments. So those were some of the characters and regiments that I really like playing with. Now let's talk about some of the rules that I like and enjoy about the 100 Kingdoms. One of them is kind of obvious. It's Speed of Horse, the Supremacy ability from the Mounted Noble Lord. Now, this not only gives glorious charge, but it gives support too, which is just amazing. So let's talk about glorious charge first. Glorious charge. This regiment may add the inspiration bonus to impact attack rolls. In addition, when it successfully completes a charge action, this regiment counts as having Terrifying 1 special rule for that action. Support X, and in this case it's going to be 2 for Speed of Horse. If this stand makes support attacks against an enemy regiment in its regiment's front arc, it contributes X additional support attacks per unengaged stand. Alright, so we're going to talk about support. So support X, and in this case it's going to be 2 for Speed of Horse. If the stand makes support attacks against an enemy regiment in its regiment's front arc, it contributes X additional support attacks per unengaged stand. While a regiment is engaged by an enemy regiment in its flank or rear, they lose a support X special rule. The additional support attacks generated by the special rule also inflict impact hits. And this is the key. So, after having calculated the amount of impact attacks an unengaged stand would support with, then add impact attacks equal to X value of support special rule. So in essence, they're going to get 2 attacks in the back as well as 2 attacks in the front. And so this is why I like to be able to kind of maneuver my household knights into a way where there's only 2 stands in the front and they can charge something. And since they have support 2, the front 2 are going to get 2 attacks, impact attacks. And then the back 2 will get 2 impact. And everyone a little bit behind will get 2. So all unengaged stands get 2 attacks, impact attacks. So everyone gets impact attacks. And that's just the way it works. My next 2 are kind of tied in together. It's using Dynastic Alliance and the Chapter Mage. So I'll go into the Chapter Mage second, and I'm going to talk about Dynastic Alliance first. Normally, you can't have a Chapter Mage as a warlord. And that kind of a bummer. But what you can do is, if you take Dynastic Alliance, you can take the Chapter Mage as a warlord. And when they do this, they get the Was it protective glyph? No. Give me a second here. Yeah, it was protective glyphs. So in other words, what this basically says is that when the chapter mage is going to target a regiment and it has with a spell, and that spell is a self spell, you can actually use that spell on another regiment 8 inches away. Now, this is where I was talking earlier with the chapter mage's ability to get close to, like, let's say, my household knights or even my Steel Legion and heal them. This is how I was able to do that with Dynastic Alliance and the Protective Glyph. On top of that, the Protective Glyph also gives enemy interference across the board instead of just 8 inches away from my chapter mage. Now, while I kind of like this and I thought it would be really fun, if you're playing against Spire or Wadroon, it really doesn't work. They're not using magic. So if they're not using magic, the enemy interference doesn't really apply. So while I thought it was going to be really fun to do this and have the enemy interference across the board, it's worked out very infrequently for me to actually use enemy interference. And it happened to be just that I play against Spire and Wadroon a lot. And so that's just kind of my misfortune. When moving on to having your chapter mage as a warlord, again, it gives that ability of her spell of Niam's Tears. It's the healing spell that she has. It changes it from self to up to 8 inches away, so you can actually heal any regiment that's within 8 inches of your chapter mage, which is just amazing. And that's why I love taking a chapter mage as my second warlord in Dynastic. We're using a Dynastic Alliance. So the trick to using this combination of the Dynastic Alliance and your chapter mage as your second warlord is to maximize your potential with Niam's Tears. And how do you do that? You do it by making sure you take Arcane 1, 2, and 3. So Arcane 1 is going to give the chapter mage +1 to being a wizard. So that'll change her from 5 to now a 6. Then Arcane 2 is going to give her not only the blessed special rule, but it also makes it that it's just for scaling spells, it's going to count every regiment as having 3 fewer stands. Now, Arcane 3 is really where it gets interesting. Arcane 3 gives her 1 automatic success. So, Niam's Tears say for every success, you get 2 heals, or 2 wounds healed. So, if you already have 1 success, you already started off with 2 automatic heals, which I love. You're never going to lose anything. You're always going to have a heal. Okay? So then, you're going to roll 6 dice. That's up to 12 more potential heals. So you're looking at 2 to 14 heals. If the 2 to 14 is not enough heals for you, you can always give your chapter mage focused, which I think is only like 15 points, and you can get an extra re-roll every time you cast a spell. So that may help you to, up the percentage of what you're going to get in heals. And that's why I also use my big regiment of men-at-arms, so that I'm healing them up, keeping them, protecting my chapter mage, and then moving my chapter mage in a position to heal other regiments that are within 8 inches of her. So my next section is my playstyle. My playstyle is developed over time, and it's changed based on how I want to play my army in the future. Okay? So, and it's really not geared up towards that at all right now. And it's kind of frustrating. That's kind of why I put them on the back burner right now, because I want them to do something special, and I can't do that yet with the models that are released. And I should say with the models that haven't been released yet. They're coming out soon, so I'm looking forward to it. And we'll get to that in the next section. But right now, what I'm really like doing is take my mounted squire, which are light, to get them out there first. Now, they're going to move up, and while they don't create a reinforcement line, they can stop the enemy from moving forward. And that's the whole key, is to using them. It's just to get them out there and kind of slow the enemy down as much as possible. Then I have a lot of medium regiments, because I have my men-at-arms, and then I have the household knights that I love to use. Now, the household knights are going to move forward really quickly, and they're going to create a good reinforcement line, and again, hopefully continue to push back or keep the enemy at bay. Then the men-at-arms are going to come in, and I want to plop them right onto the closest objective, or the biggest valued objective, and then just sit there and not move. And hopefully that regiment's big enough to where it can sit on the objective and keep the enemy away. Even if they are engaged with my men-at-arms, they're far enough away that they can't score points. Then hopefully I've created a good reinforcement line with my knights, with my men-at-arms now, that when my Steel Legion finally do come in, on turn 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it's going to be, and if they can come in from the sides, that's just amazing, because you can pull them in right to a side objective, and if your men-at-arms are right there taking over a middle objective, and then your Steel Legion comes over and takes one of the side objectives, your money, right? And you're just gaining more points, and I don't feel like the Steel Legion are getting knocked off of any objective. And if they are getting beaten down by a different, stronger regiment, then you take your chapter mage and move them towards there and just try to heal. And hopefully the men-at-arms will have enough bulk to do the job as well as the Steel Legion. I mean, the Steel Legion are going to do the job, I feel like, anyway. So that's basically how I like to play. Now, moving on to the future and what I'm looking forward to this army and how I actually want to play this army. I want all cavalry. Complete, just a cavalry army. Mounted squires, household knights, the priory commander, and some of the orders. I've looked at a few of the orders, and they look like they're going to be so amazing to play. I'm really looking towards the Crimson Tower, but we'll see. I really want to play them all and just kind of see how they end up and how they work out. But that's what I want to do. I want to have all cavalry all the time and just charging the field, doing their damage, and then moving around as fast as possible. I just think it's going to be a fun way of playing the army. And, I probably won't use my Steel Legion as much, but it'll be fun moving around on horses. So that's what I'm looking forward to. As soon as those start showing up in the stores and they're starting being available, I'm going to start grabbing those. And as soon as I have a full cavalry army of 2,000 points, I'm going to start fielding it out all the time and figuring out a way to make it work if it doesn't work. I have a feeling it's going to work great, because it's going to be like they got the charges, and then they got impact hits, and then with the stronger regiments of cavalry that have cleave and other stuff like that, it's just going to be so much fun to play with. So I'm really looking forward to those orders and playing with a priory commander mounted. And so that's where we're looking forward to the future. All right, well, thank you for joining me for the Resinator's Conquest podcast. This is episode 1, where we talked all about the 100 Kingdoms. Next week, most likely, is going to be the Nords. That's the second faction I really started collecting. Now, I can't say I was collecting Spire, because I really wasn't collecting Spire. I just had the box set. And to be very honest, I didn't even have all those put together when I started collecting the Nords. So, next week, Nords. Thanks for joining me.